My name is Pluto Wah. I was born in Thailand, which is pretty much between Myanmar and Thai border. I immigrated to United States in 2010, September. I remember some of it back in Thailand, living there. As a kid, we're just like pretty much free. There are education, but it's not like in America. The stuff that we do back there was starting at age 3, you already need to start helping your parents out by going out, collecting firewood, river water, and we will make, I was considered as a toy from like these bamboo poles, and I guess just going hunting. Yeah. My culture is very welcoming people. We love inviting people, talking about our culture. Like during Korean New Year, we invite every race, every ethnicity. And me living in City Heights is like, I guess, a perfect place because it's super diverse. Like where we get like every kind of ethnicity around here.
My name is Linh Nguyen, born in Da Nang City in Vietnam. I came to the United States about 11 years ago, and I came in the process of migration here to reunite it with my family. My family decided to come to the United States because we have a lot of girls in our families, and growing up in Vietnam, we see that there's not a lot of opportunity for us unless I think you're born into a wealthy family. Then yeah, it's not a lot of opportunities, and I think they wanted to bring us here to give us better opportunities and more right for us here, and I think that's kind of the reason why our whole family did the move. Growing up, my family have like 5 people, and we live in this very tiny little house in Vietnam in Da Nang City, and it's about 400 square foot. At the time of growing up, it seems like a big house to me because we have so many different floors. But now come back and visit, it's so small. It's like the ceiling is like literally there. But I remember growing up, we didn't have a lot, but my dad would always do these house projects. Like he did mural, he would do a lot of renovations around the house to make the house look more lively. And he's very crafty, and so I think with that, I remember one time we got an air conditioning device. It was really hot in Vietnam, and so we don't have room. So in order for it to work, everybody had to be in the same floor, and we would have the ritual where we get like a wood panel to cover the stair to the top floor and cover like the stair to the bottom floor to make sure it's like one room. And it was a fun ritual for me to do with my family every time we need to use the air conditioning. And just that experience, it really did give me a perspective like you don't need to have a lot, but you can always make the most out of what you have, and being crafty and just be grateful for the situations, and I think that had helped me a lot, and it's a great value that I hold on to, and I brought it here to me in America, and yeah, I'm proud of it.
My name is Lon Chhay. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, and came out here to San Diego, California when I was just an infant. My parents were born in Cambodia. They came out here in 1982. They came out here because of the war that was going on in Cambodia during the 70s and 80s. Growing up as a kid, we moved around a lot, and one of the memories that stuck with me from elementary was I went to Kennedy Elementary out in Southeast, and a kid had asked me if I was Chinese, and I told him right now I'm Cambodian, and he had asked me like, what's that? And me being young, I didn't know how to explain it to him, you know. I just like, I'm Cambodian. He's like, so you're not Chinese? Like, nah, I'm Cambodian. Like, I didn't know how to explain it to him really. So at that moment, I was kind of confused and kind of like, how does he not know what a Cambodian is? I'm Cambodian. And so that led me to kind of push away the Cambodian culture and try to embrace more of the American culture as far as like being an Americanized, like, you know, I'm trying to be like one of the other kids, you know, because there wasn't too many kids like me at that school. Eventually led me to embrace a subculture, growing up, and ended up joining gangs and getting involved in things that weren't too productive or too positive. So I spent my entire teen years and my entire youth in correctional facilities. So it's been impactful in my life because while being incarcerated, that's when I was thinking of, I tried to read more about my culture and things like that, and then I started to embrace my culture. You know, now I'm proud of, like, you know, I'm Cambodian. You know, like, and then I'm able to educate folks on where Cambodia is at and stuff like that, and a little bit of our history about the war, the times before that, the empire, and things like that. So yeah. As far as impact me, how did my upbringing impact me? I'm not proud of some of the things I've done growing up, but it's made me who I am today. So I don't want to say like I wish it didn't happen, because, you know, it happened. But what I did already. I can't take it back. But it's made me to grow to the person I am now.
Hi, I'm Brian, and I was born in San Diego, California. My parents were born in Vietnam, and specifically my dad was born in Nha Trang, and my mom was born in a village I forgot. My dad, he actually snuck across, like, he left with two of his cousins on a little boat, and they got to Malaysia somehow and flew over, and then my mom went with a bunch of her siblings, and they had to go to different countries back and forth, and then somehow they finally made it. A memory that really stood out to me was Multicultural Day during elementary school. And my mom would dress me up in an aliyah, and I would share my culture. And, you know, everyone else brought their own culture, and I got to see all those little differences we shared, all the little traditions, the values, and it really showed the uniqueness in my own Vietnamese culture. And at the end of the day, it really reinforced, like, who I am, how I look, all the things that we did, the traditions, Lisa, Chúc mừng năm mới, and all that kind of stuff. It really made me appreciate that.
My name is Jennifer Ho, and I was born in the Chicago suburbs. My parents were born and raised in Vietnam, and they came to the US as refugees during the war. Sure. I'll share the story of the day that I met my grandfather. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. I was about 8 or 9 years old. And we met him at the San Diego airport. My family and I got in the car and drove down to the airport. And this was back in the day where you could walk right up to the gate to meet your party. So I remember us all waiting there, standing there waiting for him. And when he finally appeared, he was really happy to see us. There was just a lot of joy and laughter and hugging and smiling from everybody there. And I didn't know why we were there. I didn't really have a concept of who he was, but I remember just everyone being really happy that day and in that moment. It wasn't until a couple of decades later that I understood how important that day was. And that's because it had been almost 20 years since the family had seen him. So what had happened was his family, so my grandparents, my dad and his two brothers, had the opportunity to come to the US. And at the very last minute, my grandpa decided that he wasn't gonna go. He had been fighting and he didn't want to leave his men behind. So my grandmother and her three sons, including my dad, came to the US without him. And shortly after they left, my grandfather was taken as a prisoner of war. And I don't know how long he was imprisoned. I don't know what happened to him there. He never talked about his experience as a prisoner. But after he was finally released, it then took some time for my grandmother and my dad to get him sponsorship to come here to the US. So that day at the airport was really significant because that was the first time that they had seen him in 20 years, almost. So after we picked him up from the airport, we all drove home. We all lived in the same house for a long time after that. And he just became a really important person in my life in that he was really loving and compassionate and kind to me and my brother in a way that I think we really needed. So he lived until January of 2019, which was exactly a month before my grandmother passed away. And I like to think that after a lifetime here on Earth together, they wanted to be together in the next place as well. So yeah, he was just always a great person in my life and a really powerful and loving figure, and probably the only person in my life where I can distinctly remember their entrance into my life and their exit, which feels really significant to me. So that day at the airport when I met him, he said to me, the first thing he said to me was, "Gosh, you're so little, but your glasses are so big." And I think because he just radiated so much love, not just for me, but for everybody. He was just such a loving person. Those words didn't have the sting that they did when other people would say things like that to me, because they were coming from him. Even though I had just met him, his words didn't hurt me because he was just so full of love. So yeah, that's the story of how I met my grandfather.
Jamile Yaw Lay Htoo. Yo Ketale Koviama. Me Kebaba Koba Kepo. Yaw Lay Htoo, the cheater, yet if he lager for the chin. Kanya Pale to Sina Pali Pali Pasina Palamana, P. A quarter pocket art or the Tate Bajivano.
My name is Sharon Neak, and I was born in Cambodia. 1982, have war. We just come sleep on the tree like 2-3 months before we come to Thai. And we don't know where we're going. Look like the tree leaf and just blow. You don't feel where I go. A lot of people die anywhere under the tree. But I'm not, because my husband, he got a relative in Thai, go to hiding in Thai, like 4 or 3 months something. Yeah. And they called to come to stay in Thailand. Yeah, he had no food. He had war, all the bullet every day. No work, up to war work a lot. If you not work or you act something not good, you kill. Oh, kill, die to die, that's why we go to Thailand. Yeah, I was still in my in Cambodia, like 24 years old. I have three kids. Two. I married in 1969, and after I have 3 kids, they all passed away. Yeah, work hard too, the same. Yeah, all sell food. My mom, my sister, sell food. Yeah.
My name is Nancy Phung-Smith and born and raised in San Diego. In 1981, with my sister, who was 8 months old at the time, 5 cousins, and then a couple uncles. Yeah, and thinking about this project and the kind of multi-generational aspect of it, the memory that popped up for me was when I was 6 years old, and my parents, who worked a lot, came home and said, let's go fishing at the OB Pier. So we were all excited, you need to get out, go. Myself and 5 siblings, so there's six of us, my parents. We had our bags of chips and buckets and fishing poles and everything. And I remember us walking down the pier, and these 2 gentlemen are walking the opposite way, and they kind of mumbled, I bet you they don't even know the Pledge of Allegiance. And me being 6 years old, excitedly, like, I know it, and my dad kind of just like scurried us away. I share this memory because it's evolved in its meaning to me throughout the years, from being 6 years old and saying the Pledge of Allegiance every day in school, being excited, to, my teenage, kind of early adulthood of, being more exposed to the disparities of race and culture and prejudices. And because, before that, I was pretty sheltered, all my friends were my cousins, were my siblings, right? And knowing that and incorporating that and thinking about the memory, feeling anger and hurt, of these are the kind of the realities that we live in. Then, as I got a little older, it evolved again, right? Of the things my parents had to go through. Me as a Vietnamese American, kind of like walking these 2 identities, right? And then thinking about I got a little sliver of what my parents had to face, in coming here as immigrants. So that kind of like the heartache and sadness in that, and thinking about their experiences, right? As I stepped into my own, into adulthood. And now as a parent myself of 2 kids, again, thinking about that memory again, and, thinking about the parental aspect of it, protecting our kids, the realities that are out there, kind of like that piece as well. So just sharing that, and I think it's important for us to remember and know that that the narrative can continue to change throughout our lives, and the meaning making around it.
I am Nicanora Montenegro, and I was born in the Philippines. I came to the United States in 2003, and the major reason is because my mom had a heart surgery here in America, and nobody can seem to take care of her. And since I am the eldest of 14 children, I feel that I am the most responsible person to take care of her. That was the main reason why I came here. there's one thing I would like to share with you, especially with my family. You know, I come from a big family of 14 children, and being the eldest, of course, I am the father and the mother of the brood. But anyway, my father had really left a lot of very good values that the brood, all of us, had integrated into our lives. The first, there are actually two values: the value of equality and the value of equity. And that's what I would like to share with you. My father, when we were still children, kept on repeatedly telling us the story that a peanut, no matter how small it is, must be divided equally among all of the children. And he had been saying that no one of the children should get the share of the other. And be sure that when we divide the peanut, no matter how small it is, must be divided equally among the children, and nobody should be left behind. And that was a big lesson for all of us kids. So therefore, we always think that every one of us should have equally all the blessings, and we should not feel jealous of each one. In fact, we should protect each other's share, and we have to be sure that in everything, all kids are equally distributed, whatever it is. That's the reason that why in one of our union, our get together as a family, we actually had a t-shirt where there was a big peanut on it, and it was divided, and each of our names are there because we love that value of equality. But my father did not only make us realize that there should be equality, but there should be equity as well. And we should understand that when we were still children. So one December, it was Christmas, my father came home and said that, "Guys, I got a Christmas bonus of 1,000 pesos. That's pesos in the Philippines. Now, we have to divide this equally among you kids so that each one of you will have a share, and with your share, you tell us what do you want that share to be? What do you want to buy out of it?" Oh, that we were all so happy. And each one of us would said, the other one said, "I want a toy. The other one, I want new dress. I want all of this and that." And then my father said, "Okay, that's good. Each one of you have a goal for your share. However, why don't you take a look at each other and find out who among you are most in need of something?" Oh, that was really shocking for all of us. And so we looked at each other. And then one of my sisters said, "Oh, look at my brother. His shoes are broken. It's a laughing shoes." You know, we say laughing when the sole of the shoes are doing like that when you walk. So his shoes is laughing. So he needs shoes. But the cost of the shoes will be more than his share. So some of the children said, "Oh, I'll give half of my share." And the other said, "I'll give half of my share so he can buy the shoes." You see what I mean? Then my father said, "Is that enough?" And then we all look at each other and we said, "Look at this other sibling. His school dress are already, the hand-me-down things, and has a lot of, how do you call it, when my mom sew certain rips, Our sister here needs more clothes than we do." And so each one of us will say, "Okay, I'll give my share," something like that, until everybody was so happy. And some of us said, "I don't have a share anymore, but I have more than enough by giving and sharing my share to each of the kids." And that was the lesson of equity that my father gave us. That's the lesson that I really learned from my father. And Father, I miss you. And there are many more values that he had shared. I've just shared with you just a very bit of it. And those values made each of one siblings a character.
Hi, my name is Julie Liu, and I was born in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. My parents are both from Vietnam, and my dad came in '75 during the fall of Saigon because he was in the Air Force. So the Americans had, extra seats for folks in the Air Force, and he was able to get on. He was like a single guy. He was like 18, 19 when he got on the plane. And he was sponsored by a family in Florida and then moved over to Oklahoma, and that's where he met my mom. So yeah, they met in Oklahoma, and that's where I was born too. Okay, so when I was 6 or 7, I got the flu really, really bad, to the point where I didn't want to get out of bed, I wasn't eating. I just remember feeling really, really sick. Naturally, my mom took me to the ER, the Rady's Children's here in San Diego, and it must have been nighttime when we were roomed, because I remember sitting in a hospital bed with the lights off, and my mom was sitting across from me. And I remember feeling that she must have been really nervous for me too, partly because I was super sick, and partly because I think it made her really anxious to navigate the American healthcare system. Eventually, the doctor came in. He was this young, white, male doctor. And in retrospect, he probably was a doctor in training, because I just remembered thinking he was so young. And he was doing my lung exam. He was checking my lungs, and he stopped because he noticed these large red linear streaks on my back that looked like bruises. It was my dad had coined me a day before. And if you've never seen coining before, it looks pretty jarring the first time you see it. They're just really big bruises, it looks like. And he immediately just kind of stops and was like, how did this happen? And my mom doesn't understand, but she registers that this guy looks concerned, and she asked me in Vietnamese what's happening. And so I explained it to her, and then I have to tell it back to him. Mind you, I'm like 6 or 7, and I'm like super sick. I can't remember what I told him. I mean, it could have been something very complicated I told him. But his response was, tell your parents not to do this again. And then he walked out of the room. And he never once looked at my mom. And it's a really significant memory for me as a child, because I'm actually a doctor now. And I think it really was a good teaching point on how to not be when someone's sick and vulnerable.